everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the axles on a Arrma 4x4. You're going to need two sets of replacement axles. I'm going with the CVD set, which eliminates the weak point of these axles here. The part number on those is ARA 310870. The other thing you're going to need is tools, 7mm hex and a 2 and 2.5mm hex drivers. Alright. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first step, of course, is going to be to take the wheel off. We are going to start with the front here. And of course you're going to take your 7mm nut driver, or whatever you have, wheel tool maybe. Remove the nylon lock nut that holds on the wheel. And then you can pull the wheel off. And then the next step, you're going to want to grab a 2.5mm driver. Take this big screw out of the top of the steering hub here. And once you've got that out, there's going to be another one just like it on the bottom. Alright, and now that we've got that screw out, there's going to be one more 2mm screw right here which holds on the steering linkage, and then you'll be able to pull this bearing carrier and the outer axle out as one assembly, and I'll show you what to do with that. Alrighty, with that screw out of there, you're going to basically pull that bearing carrier out, and you'll notice this bushing falls out of this top hole here. You want to make sure you don't lose that guy. And then you should be able to slide all of that out as one assembly there. And the next step is going to be to push the inner axle like this to basically make a little bit of space. If you're struggling, you can also pull it like that, and then you have space. You can fit your tool underneath the hex here. Pry the hex off. You'll notice there's a pin that it is friction fit to. You want to slide that pin out and make sure you don't lose that either. And then you have your front bearing carrier and your outer axle disassembled there. Now if you're replacing this guy, obviously if it's broken, it might be in multiple pieces here, but since I'm just upgrading to CVD axles, we're going to go ahead and set this guy aside. Keep him as an extra in case something does happen. Alright, so the next more tricky step is going to be to get the inner axle out. Might be a little bit hard to see exactly how I'm doing this here, but essentially you're going to bend the axle shaft sort of like this out of the way, and then you should be able to stick a 2mm hex driver straight in from where the axle was before, and there will be a hole in the U-joint in the middle there. And just keep going in until you feel it engage with that hex screw in there. Might take a few tries. You can also kind of look down from the top and see where the tool is at, which may be helpful. Make sure you actually have a 2mm driver inserted into your tool there. That'll be very helpful. There we go. Now we've got it engaged. And you're just going to unscrew that guy. Until you can feel that it's not unscrewing anymore. You can go ahead and remove your tool. And then it's as simple as giving the inner axle a good tug until it comes out like that. Alright. And what's cool about CVD axles is they actually go on in a different way. I'll show you how to install the inner axle here right quick. Then we'll move on to the outer axle installation. So for the inner axle here, rather than having a screw that goes down through the center because there would be nowhere to put it on the CV axles here, they have a grub screw right there. Now you'll notice on the shaft in here there's going to be a little indentation. You want to put your axle on in such a way that it lines up, the grub screw lines up with that indentation. And then once you slide that on, take the 2mm driver again, tighten down that grub screw until it bottoms out, and then the inner axle is installed. Alright, and next step we're going to move on to installing the outer axle. Alright, so the outer axle is going to be a bit easier to install than the inner axle there. Basically just the reverse of disassembly. Go ahead and insert your axle just like that. Go ahead and find that pin that held on the hex there. Slide it through the hole on the axle here. Just like so. And then you can go ahead and press on your hex there. Now if you wanted to switch to 12mm hexes, which are a bit more common than the 14s that Arrma includes, now would be a good time. I know that Duratrack sells an aluminum set. Alright, and don't fret if you can't get it pressed on there all the way, because when you go to install the wheel later on, the screw from the wheel and the thickness of the wheel will essentially press this hex on there the rest of the way. And if you feel that your bearings might need a little bit of lube, now would be a good time as well. Shoot some in there while you got this assembly in your hands. Alright, and with that all put together, we're ready to go ahead and install this whole assembly here, and thus finish installation of the front axles. Then we'll move on to doing the rear. So the first thing we're going to want to do is slide this outer shaft into the inner shaft here. And it doesn't have to go in any particular orientation. It will sort of key in there. Then of course you're going to want to grab that bushing I told you about earlier. Go ahead and slide that guy back into its spot here. And just hold it in place there. Oops. Let's try that again. And just hold it in place there while you push the bearing carrier back into its home, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and attach the top and bottom screws here using our 2.5mm hex driver and the screws that we removed before. Now, getting these to line up, as you can see, may be a little bit tricky. Alright, and with those screws installed, then we can go ahead and use the 2mm hex driver to install the steering linkage again. And this will certainly be another one of those situations where you'll have to argue with it for a moment to get it to align. I got lucky. course, the last step is going to be throw your wheel back on there, and then we're ready to move on to the rear. Alright, so here at the rear, the process is largely similar. We are going to take a 2mm driver, that one, and remove this top screw here. The rear is going to be a little bit simpler than the front, actually. And once we've got that screw out, for the stock A-arms, there's going to be an offset screw that's another 2mm here that holds the pin in. If you've got the RPM A-arms like I do, you have an inline screw that is actually a Phillips screw that you will have to remove, like so. Alright, and then we're going to use the 2mm driver again, basically just to push the pin out to where we can grab onto it and pull it out. And then just like the front, you'll be able to take this whole assembly here, inner axle and all, slide it right out. So installing the outer axle is going to be pretty much the same with one exception. On the CVD here, there's going to be this metal ring. You want to take that off, replace it with the plastic rings that are included in the kit, and then you're ready to install the rear outer axles there. Alright, so focusing on the inner axle here, which is different from the front, you're going to notice it's a bit harder to move this axle out of the way, but if you just give it a good shove, you'll be able to fold it out of the way. Then take our 2mm hex driver, and it's held in the same way that the front axles were. Only problem here is it's going to be a bit difficult to find the screw here. Alrighty, and once you have finally found that screw, you can go ahead and unthread it here till it's all the way unthreaded. And go ahead and pull the axle right off. And then, once again, same as the front, to install the inner shaft there, you got the grub screw. Make sure you line it up with the indent that's on your axle shaft there. Push it on, tighten it on, and you're good to go. And with the inner axle installed and the outer axle assembly ready to go, you can go ahead and toss this guy back together. Same way that we took it apart, we're going to slide the pin in here. It's going to take a little bit of persuasion here. Like that. Use our tool, push it in there. Install our set screw. Like so. And then last thing, of course, is going to be the top screw here with our 2mm. Alright, and there we have it. That rear axle is installed. And there we have it. That's how you install CVD slider set from Arrma on your Arrma 4-wheel drive. These axles, as I said before, eliminate the weak point of the stock axles, which is this U-joint right here. A lot of plastic in there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Do what you're going to do. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a good one.